Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner. We are reaching the end of the college regular season. One more weekend of games, bids hanging in the balance. Keith, it's going to be a blast of a weekend, particularly with Eastern's just a tremendous tournament that not only gives us a look at the top teams in the nation, but also teams that are fighting for a bid for their region.
A thrilling conclusion, particularly in the men's division. The women's division, things are a little more settled, but the men's division has this kind of capstone event, and it's not uncommon for it to feel a little more like Huck Finn maybe has a bigger impact on the final rankings with teams on the bubble. That is not the case this year, and there's something nice about the alignment between having the big elite end of season tournament also be the one that is going to define the bid picture for the men's division. Having that happen simultaneously is a lot more fun, I think.
So just a quick look, and we'll talk more about this later in the show when we make our picks and discuss Easterns. But we've got 12 teams currently sitting on a bid going to Easterns. And then we have Brown, who's 1 spot out, Ohio State, 2 spots out, Georgia, Michigan, UNC Wilmington, Cal, Northeastern Wisconsin, all in the 20s, trying to get up to that 17 spot. And then you've got Auburn, who somehow got into this tournament, ranked 58th. So probably not much doing there for the Southeast, but a lot of teams with a chance not only to improve their seed at nationals, should they make it, but also teams have a chance to play into an actual bid this weekend. And there's a lot of teams. You look, there's the 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 17 seeds who have to defend their bid. So should be a fascinating weekend.
And you got to keep one ear open, too, for what's going on in Northwest Challenge, where you've got 2 more teams that are around the bubble, UBC, who currently has a bid, and Washington, and a couple more teams that are in, that top 35 or so. So there's going to be, the bid picture is going to be being decided over the course of this weekend in the men's division.
Certainly is. And we'll talk more about it a little bit later on. We got a fun one today. We're going to have Jack Brown joining us, captain of the Washington men's team. He was also covering Northwest Challenge, the women's division, for us this past weekend. So we'll talk with him about that and what's coming up this weekend at the Northwest Challenge. Before we get to that, though, a couple little items of news. First of all, Amanda Dallas has been named the new Premier Ultimate League commissioner. And maybe not a name that you've heard of because she doesn't come from the world of Ultimate. She actually comes from the world of quad ball, formerly Quidditch, where she is the commissioner of Major League Quad Ball. So, Keith, pretty interesting hire here and feels like actually a really good fit for the PUL.
It's a curious move, one that I'm very intrigued by because this is the type of thing that we haven't seen a lot of in Ultimate. We don't see a lot of folks coming from outside the community who have already have the core competencies to do jobs within the community and then trying to build up their knowledge of the game rather than the other way around. People whose core competency is Ultimate and then trying to build up the skills to do the job is what we're typically seeing. So I'm curious to see how this will work for Amanda Dallas. And you know what? I like to see that we got somebody coming in, Charlie, who knows about the power of rebranding your sport with a better name. I'm just saying, I know I've got an ally out there, somebody who sees that the SEO can be real valuable.
Yeah, from Quidditch to quad ball, from Frisbee to flat ball. Keith can see it right now, folks. No, but Disc 7s is never going to happen.
Field Disc is worse, but probably still better than Ultimate.
Premier Disc 7s League. I don't know. I don't see it. Interesting, though, in the press release on the PUL website, Amanda talks about the fact that she was actually paying attention to the PUL and took cues from the PUL, was sort of following the league on social media. And so when she saw there was a commissionership open, she applied for it right away. So we'll have to have her on here on the show probably in the next couple of weeks if we can make that happen. Looking forward to talking with her about that. And I know the PUL has been looking for a sort of consistent commissioner for some time now. So, what else we got, Keith?
I'm just thinking about right now, like before we move on, like I don't know what quad ball Twitter is like, but hopefully Amanda's ready for Ultimate Twitter, which is a wonderful, welcoming community. But no, in all seriousness, it's a tough gig. You gotta have thick skin, but it's nice to have somebody who's already basically gone through the process of launching a league. So you kind of have the know-it-all, or the wherewithal rather, to kind of go through the bumpy road that can come with that. But looking at other news, a kind of a nice story, Charlie, and one that came out of nowhere to me. Total surprise to me. We're starting to see some AUDL rosters start to drop. There have been some signings that have basically come out over the past, 6 weeks or so. Sporadic signing announcements, but one came across that caught me off guard and is nice to see. Grant Lindsley returning to play after the head injury he suffered at the national championships, the club national championships with New York Pony. He's returning, but with Salt Lake. So he'll be playing for the Shred in the AUDL in this upcoming season. Great to hear that Grant is going to be able to get back on the field. And exciting to see him joining with a young team that probably could use some of his stewardship.
All right. I always take this kind of thing with a grain of salt. We've seen it many times before. Oh, Mac Hecht is signing with Detroit. Oh, some player from way living far away is signing with this team. Khalif signing with Atlanta. And really, has any of that ever really worked out? I would say it hasn't. But Grant Lindsley is a tremendous player who could really help Salt Lake if he plays. Now, I don't know how much he's going to be there. I don't know how many games he's going to play. He has family in the area, so perhaps we'll be pleasantly surprised. For me, the big news here is simply that he is going to be back on the field. And I actually saw on social media a couple of weeks ago that the doctors had cleared him to get back out and start playing again, which is tremendous news because it's only been, I'm trying to remember, when I interviewed him, it was maybe 6-8 weeks ago. And like things were still kind of touch and go and like not that great. So it's awesome to see that he's made so much progress. And, again, like if he plays a lot with them, even if he can just, help them get to the playoffs and then be there for the playoff games, like he is a game changing player. Like he is going to just make their offense better. Simple as that. And I mean, he's been playing D-line for Pony for a few years now, so you could put him on D2 if you wanted.
Yeah, let's not forget that this is a World Games player. Like, this is
yes.
This is not just your average signing if he's going to be playing at the level that we've seen from him in the past.
So it could be huge, but I have to reserve a little judgment because of the kinds of things we've seen in the past. It really hasn't been that impactful when teams sign big out of town free agents. Okay.
This is a small story, Charlie, but it did come across our Discord and I did find it also interesting, and it's topical here for both of these topics that we just discussed. So for those who are not familiar, Davenport University is a D3 school that is recruiting a team, and they are able to provide scholarships a lot like what we've seen from Oklahoma Christian in D3 as well. And they announced their first signing for their women's team, and it is a player without any background in Ultimate, just like an athlete who was interested in going to Davenport and didn't have a scholarship. Her name is Lindsay Gibson, and she was like a wrestler and a track athlete and like a varsity athlete in high school. And like the experiments of watching Oklahoma Christian sign players and like seeing how that was going to work out was already fascinating. And now you're just saying, like, what happens if you just take a team and just recruit athletes and from local high school athletes who are going to go to the school there, or maybe we're considering which school to go to. Maybe you bring in a couple Ultimate players. Like, I have no idea what to expect from Davenport once it all comes together, but I can't say that I'm not entertained by just the concept of what's potentially possible there.
Are they a D3 school? Do we know that?
I think so. I think that they're, at least from an ultimate standpoint, are competing in D3.
Let's look at their enrollment here, because it's an enrollment thing, right?
Yeah,
undergraduate enrollment is 4,500.
7,500.
So
that
would definitely put them in the camp. I don't know what their total enrollment in 2017 was 7,200. So I don't know. I don't know if Davenport has ever fielded an ultimate team before. I simply
not to my
know.
knowledge.
It's regardless going to be very interesting. I love it. I feel like when we've seen D1 college athlete quality, athletes come in and start playing ultimate, even if they've never played before, they quickly become very good. I mean, we're seeing this in Arizona, and we've seen it time and time again with players who come out of high school as, I could have played D3 soccer or whatever. I could have played D1, this or that, didn't want to do it, or I washed out, I got tired of it. And then I found ultimate. And they these are like Hall of Fame type players. I'm not saying that's what is going to happen with Lindsay, but I don't think this is a bad plan. I think it could work. I think that there's too much emphasis placed on, how to throw. So what? You teach people how to throw.
It reminds me of like a Disney movie, though. It's like Mighty Ducks. Like, we're just going to scrounge up a bunch of athletes and show up. Like, imagine being signed to a team to play a sport you never played. And you're like, oh, so, who else is on the team? And you're like, no, it's you right now. You are the team. I mean, for all I know, they have a couple other players and haven't announced those signings or whatnot. But for your first signing to be a player with no ultimate background is like, it's a wild thing, and I wish them the best of luck. I'm very curious what will happen with them.
I mean, this is kind of a big deal. Like, hasn't been discussed too much yet, but like the AUDL is running a youth camp at Davenport this summer, and like this is like a real scholarship with real money. You get a $10,000 scholarship. You get all your travel, lodging, food, fees covered. Like jerseys, everything, coaches, trainers, medical care. I mean, like this is like an actual, real, serious scholarship. Maybe more so even than Oklahoma Christian. So we'll see what comes of it.
I just like that it dovetailed perfectly with some of the concepts we were talking about across both of those news bits.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, Jack Brown joins us right here on Deep Look. We'll talk Northwest Challenge, women's and men's, Washington season, and more with Jack. Stay with us.
Spring college season is here and the warm weather is on its way. That means it's reversible season. Breakmark is giving away free reversibles for teams that order a bundle. With prices starting at just $75, it's the best way to have your team looking game ready this spring. And reorders get a 20% discount. Get started today at breakmark.com.
Joining us now on Deep Look is Jack Brown. He's the captain of the University of Washington men's team, and he was covering the Northwest Challenge women's division this past weekend before he'll be playing in the Northwest Challenge men's division this coming weekend. Jack, welcome.
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's going to make sense that we start by talking about what happened this past weekend. We saw Colorado take down the Northwest Challenge. They beat Carleton 13-8 in the final. Really strong tournament for the Quandary team. Tell us a little bit about what you saw in that game and from Quandary over the course of the weekend.
I think Quandary was looking really strong this weekend. I know that they re-added Chloe Phillips after not having her at Stanford. So, she was looking really good this weekend, crossing over for a lot of deep points. She was a lot of the times just getting the ball moving and making sure that their offense stayed in motion. They were still without Stacey Daskill, who had snowboarding commitments. Unfortunate, we didn't get to see a fully powered Quandary team, but they were looking really strong this weekend. I don't know. I think they took down a lot of top tier competition.
The game against Carleton in the final, they kind of opened up a little bit of a lead, but Carleton's able to fight back, and then eventually Colorado's able to pull away. What do you feel like made the big difference in that matchup specifically?
I'd say that I think Carleton, they are a good team, but they do still pretty heavily rely on those stars, like Tori Gray, Arya Kishner, Melissa Earhart. They're just like their best players are the ones that they usually look to win those games. And I think that Kwanji was really come out on top, just because they didn't have a lot of those super close games that Carleton had leading up to that. I know Carleton was also playing against Superfly, and Superfly was also looking really good this weekend. And so I'm sure that really taxed Carleton going into that final.
We've seen a lot of good things about UBC coming into this season. They have so many U24 players for the Canadian national team, and they end up finishing in a really strong win over Stanford in the third place game. They lose by 2 to Colorado. Is this a championship contending team at the Nationals from what you've seen from them this weekend?
I very much think so. I was live tweeting that Colorado UBC game, and it was a battle the whole time. Colorado was able to pull away at the very end, just because I think UBC had a couple miscommunication, kind of chemistry, execution errors that I'm sure that come regionals and nationals, they're not going to be doing those kind of things. I was also talking with the captains at the end of the tournament, and they said that they are still working on ascending to what they see is going to be their height. So they said that they're doing a lot of emphasis on trying to work on their deep game this weekend. There was a bit of wind, but it was not like detrimental. It wasn't like, not non-ultimate playing conditions. I still think we're able to have a lot of competitive matches, and UBC, they were hitting their away shots really well in that first half of the game. Kind of think that just kind of going with the flow of the game, like, receivers not being as fast as they are as to start. They were just overthrowing each other by like 2 or 3 throws, but their offense I think they had 3 or 2 2-throw holds, and that's against a very talented Kwanji team. So I think they were looking really good.
In the other semifinal, you were mentioning it earlier that Carleton ended up getting a pretty tough test from a Stanford team that got an upset over Vermont in quarterfinals. What was Stanford's approach, and how did they look? I mean, do you feel like that they're in the same class as these other semifinalists that we're looking at?
I definitely think that Stanford's win over Vermont was certainly earned, and they deserved to be in that semi. I was watching the Washington Kwanji game during quarters just because it was like that semifinal rematch from Stanford. So had a lot of my focus on there. And then I heard that Stanford was up on Vermont by a couple. So I had to run across campus and go have a look at that. And I mean, I think that the Stanford team is super disciplined. Let me make sure I check my notes and see who they didn't have. They were down Hannah Huddleston and Anna Fisher-Lopez, which Hannah is a U24 player for United States, and Anna Fisher-Lopez was one of the U20 selections. But I think that Stanford was still looking really good without them. It's like, I think I wrote this in my Saturday recap, I believe, just like, I think that Stanford is the most well-coached team. They have like the best systems. They trust each other the very best. Like even without some of those stars there, like they were able to kind of rely on their system, and all of their players are good. They don't rely on that one person to win and lose them games. It's everyone contributes. I'd say that Esther Filipek was really standing out for them. Number 5, she was handling. I know that Stanford, from what I heard on the sideline, is they were a bit short on handlers this weekend, and I think that they really stepped up to the challenge of keeping that O-line moving. With the disc, they're super disciplined on both O and D lines. If you're going to get the disc away from Stanford, you have to take the disc away from Stanford. They're not going to give it to you. So I think that they're super disciplined. Their systems are really well. And their players look very capable. They make sure that, especially their cutters, they always run that hose stack and they keep it in flow. There's no cutters that catch it under and immediately look for a dump. They look for away passes, they look for unders, and they try to keep that disc moving downfield. I think that really aggressive play style makes them difficult to guard.
Stanford coaches won Coach of the Year last year, and I think you can see why as they continue that success this year. Let's flip to the other side of that matchup, because there was so much hype about Vermont coming into this tournament. They complained about the format because they wanted a chance to, have a real bracket and everything. And then they get into the bracket and they get bounced 12-8 by Stanford. Now, that was their only loss on the weekend. They didn't necessarily get that many games against the top teams, though, because they lost that quarterfinal. Like, I know you didn't watch that whole game, so maybe you only saw snippets, but from what you did see, what went wrong for them in that Stanford game?
Yeah, I was able to watch that second half and also talk to the coaches at the end of the tournament. And, the Stanford zone is something that has been mentioned, I feel like, every tournament that Superfly's been at. Just being able, I think that the Stanford team did a really good job of being able to change their pace on defensively. They played a good amount of zone. Even their O-line was playing zone, and then they'd also throw out a couple person-to-person matchups. I know Vermont is also relies on Canadian McCarthy as a pretty high usage player, and Stanford had number 12, Debbie Weir. She was stepping up and taking that matchup, and she was doing a really great job in the parts that I saw, just being able to frustrate her. I'd say Vermont, their frustration was noticeable while they were playing. I'd say that they were throwing the disc away a good amount, and then Stanford was really capitalizing on those turns and putting it in. But I'd say I think Stanford knew that they're not going to try and beat Vermont in a shootout. They're going to march it down the field. And Vermont, they played top 25 competition the whole weekend. I think those first couple of breaks that that Stanford got against them made them falter a little bit, and then because they're really used to being in those leading positions, so I think it made it really tough for them. But to get that mental toughness, the coaches were talking about how these were national level reps that that's not something that they're going to get for the rest of the season. So being able to have that right now, practice with it, something that their coaches are really excited about, and they know they got to work on their zone a bit.
I remember watching them play against Stanford at Nationals last year, and they struggled a little bit with the zone, but Kennedy McCarthy could just unlock it. Eventually, they could just start sending it to her, and she was just able to get over the top. So if Stanford has an answer for that, that could certainly tamp down an offense that can use some of that explosiveness. But Charlie pointed out it's a tough spot to be in for Vermont to say, hey, can you make it so we can get some of the top competition, and then not even get that access by the time that you get there. We talked about UBC a little bit. I think that it's fair to label them the favorite in the Northwest right now. After that, I mean, who do you think is the next best team in the Northwest? You've got Washington, Oregon, and a Western Washington team that we haven't really seen that much with Acacia Hahn, the star freshman, yet. So who do you think is next up in the Northwest, your home region?
Personally, from what I saw this weekend, I think it is Element. They have, I'd say, their cutting core is, for their O-line, is definitely the strongest aspect of their team. A lot of the times their handlers are trying to get it downfield, and then the cutters run with it. I think that they have a lot of veteran presences. Abby Hecko, Anna Kaushi, Sophia Palmer have been there a real long time. They have a lot of that big game experience. They also added Amy Nguyen, which, I'm going to keep talking about it this weekend, who also has a bunch of that experience. I'd say that like the reason I keep them above Oregon and Western is just from this weekend. I feel like Oregon and Western are still really, really young teams. Something that I thought was super unique was the Western's pre-quarter game against BYU was canceled because BYU had to go get some flights, and Western took that as an opportunity to run a practice. They were out there for hour, 2 hours, just practicing their zone, and making sure that they had it honed in. A lot of their top contributors are really young. I don't think they've had anyone that's been to college nationals on the roster. So I think they're still on the upswing. I don't think they've quite matured yet, which is why I keep them below Element. I'd say that third in the pecking order, so UBC, Element, and then I'd go with Fugue. They are a very historic organization, and watching them, like, they play with a very fast pace. I think they got really unlucky in their matchup with UBC for quarters, just because I think UBC is one of the teams that can keep up with they have pretty high octane offense. They move the disc and they immediately look for that away shot as soon as possible. Trout Wainwright was starting downfield a lot, and handlers were just trying to find them so that Trout could find something downfield. They have a lot of really young contributors, and I think that, the things that were working against Utah in pre-quarters are not going to be things that work against the Thunderbirds in quarters. So maybe if they had a different quarter matchup, they would have put up a couple more points, maybe even coming out with a win. But I still think that Western and Oregon are still pretty youthful, and aren't where they want to be yet.
Well, any other final thoughts on what you saw at Northwest Challenge this past weekend?
BYU was looking pretty strong. They adapted to the Friday weather pretty well. Friday games, I would put a bit of an asterisk on just because it was pouring rain. It was really difficult conditions. So I don't know. I would definitely check the film. I'd say that those games aren't exactly reflected in the scores. Let me think. I think that's everything for the pod, and then my recap will be coming out sometime this week.
Great. Yeah, looking forward to reading it. Okay, well, let's turn our attention then to this coming weekend. We've got the Northwest Challenge on the men's side. Your team, Washington, will be the 2 seed behind UBC. Certainly, I'm sure you're planning to try to go out there and win this weekend. But my question is how much is the bid battle on your mind going into this final tournament?
Bids are something that I learned about this year. Before that, job is go out there and win games. Not much is changing this weekend. People are talking about if we win this game, they win this game, then we lose this game, then this is working on just win games. It's a hole we dug ourselves in. We had a losing record at SBI. We had a losing record at Pres Day. We did a bit better at Stanford, but those fields were pretty bad. I feel like that was handed to us for the most part. So I'd say just win this weekend. Don't lose.
You mentioned being in a hole that you put yourself in. What was the conversation like in the team when you got off to a slow start? Was there was it like people were like, okay, we really need to change directions here? Or was it like, okay, this is just part of the process? Like, how did the team react to having a slow start, especially given how much success that most of the players on this team have had in years past?
Yeah, I'd say that, we were missing people for both SBI and Pres Day, which I think got some of our younger players some really valuable reps. We had a freshman guarding Calvin Stoughton when we played Colorado both times. So, getting people those super valuable reps, I think, is going to be it's going to be pretty critical going into this postseason and this weekend. But we should have a full team, which I'm really looking forward to. And then just like, we have a bunch of rookies this year, so trying to teach them that if you want to win, if you want to be a successful program, if you want to be a successful player, this is what it's going to look like. Just kind of that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So, I think that they've kind of picked up on the tendencies, picked up on what they need to make sure that they're progressing at a rate that's going to be really helpful this weekend and later in the month. So,
where do you think Washington stands at full strength in the national pecking order?
That's an excellent question, because if you asked me on Saturday of Santa Barbara, I'd be like, wow, we might be the worst team I've ever played for. But sometimes I practice, I'm like, God, we're really the best team. We should be a club team. I definitely think that it depends on when we face a team. I think we could beat any college team if we played them in one game. If we played one showcase game on Friday, run through 12 people, 14 people, we could beat any team that we play against. I'm not 100% sure if we get to the finals of like Pres Day. It's a lot of games really condensed. I don't think we would have had the legs to really put up much of a fight. My freshman year, we played against Oregon, super stacked Oregon team, and we played them in finals and we absolutely decimated them just because they were using their top end a lot to get to that spot. So I think that's a position that we're in as well. But just going to be our kids are going to have to grow up fast if we're going to be a title contending team.
That's good introspection, more than we hear most of the time. All right. So, any thoughts on, just the tournament overall this weekend? I know you're hosting as well. And what you're hoping to get out of it.
It's nice to have a tournament at home on campus. Something just like the messaging that I've been giving our team has been, don't think of this as like a home game. Don't think of this as like a tournament at home. Think of it as a tournament you don't have to pay for. Just to get them in the mindset of Saturday, you're gonna finish all your games Saturday. Don't go home, hang out with your friends, do stuff like that. Go home, make sure you're recovering. I think it's a great preview into Northwest Regionals. We are down Oregon. They're going to Easterns. So, the part of me that wants to go to Nationals, I'm wishing them the best of luck, as much as I hate to say it.
Will you be paying attention at all to the Easterns results?
I don't think so too much, just because, no matter how many bids we have in the region, once regionals comes, our goal is still the same, win games. So, maybe the games have a little more weight to them, but we still have the same goal.
Well, I just want to also mention, you made the U24 national team. Congratulations on that. What's that process been like? How was tryouts and, starting to get to know some of your teammates, maybe mostly remotely so far, and just, the upcoming experience in the UK?
Yeah. I'd say that the tryouts were probably one of the most taxing things that I've had to go through. I was walking a little weird for the next week. So, good on the coaches for making a pretty difficult test. I feel like one of my strengths is just my durability throughout a weekend. So, I'm happy. I was really happy to be pushed in that aspect. And then just the talent level at tryouts, you didn't really get any reps off. There wasn't anything that you could really just walk through. It was you're guarding the best player that a city has to offer. So I'd say it was just as much of a mental battle as it was a physical one. I know for me, tryouts was basically a 48-hour process. You were playing, and then as soon as playing ended, you were like, I need to go get some food. I need to go get some recovery. I was trying this tart cherry juice. I really don't know if it works. I saw NFL film said that if you want to recover, that's the way to do it. Do you have any insight, Keith?
No, I mean, look, if I believe in the placebo effect. So if you think it works, if it feels like it's working, that goes a long way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Tryouts were super difficult, but really glad that I was able to be selected. Coaches waited just a little bit. They had me on edge all of December. And then, seeing who my teammates are going to be has been super eye-opening, just because I've been watching a lot of games that I usually wouldn't. I usually only watch the games of who we're about to play next, or maybe if my friend is on a team, then watching their stuff. But now that I have teammates spanning across the country, a bunch of different teams, I've been watching a lot more film, just trying to figure out how can I make sure that my play style will complement who I'm with, who does stuff that's similar, who does stuff that is different. Just trying to figure it out. Our training weekend is going to be after this college season, so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to play with some of the United States best players.
Yeah, it's awesome. And tell us what else is going on in your Frisbee world. You played sockeye last year. What's your plan for this summer in the club department, and what's next for you?
This summer, my goal is win a gold medal in the United Kingdom. I think everything otherwise pretty much comes second to that. Club wise, I'm undecided on what I'm going to do. I would like to play club, make sure I'm getting some reps, but I also want to make sure that I'm not putting myself at risk of injury. I've been getting a bunch of reps with Mark Munoz, with the Cascades, just making sure that we have some chemistry going into that training weekend, the camp and the tournament. But I'm looking forward to it. Can't provide any club insights. My dad is a Patriots fan, so I've been hearing about Bill Belichick all the time. All too reporter comes up to me for an interview. I say, I can't say too much. You guys are the head honcho, so I'll give you.
I'm only here so I won't get fined.
Yeah,
I thought you might be announcing your retirement from competitive ultimate following your gold medal because you're going to become a full-time reporter. So, you got a spot on the staff if you decide you want to hang up the cleats.
Hopefully not too early.
Jack, do you have one more year at Washington after this?
Have plenty more years of eligibility. I can't give anyone too much scouting. I could have more school. I could not.
Could be a free agent if somebody's recruiting.
If the scholarship is right, in 2 years I will be available. I'll be on the portal.
That's right. Transfer portal time. All right. Well, hey, Jack, thank you so much for your insights, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you very much, guys.
Jack Brown with us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Claire Babbitt Bryan. I'm from the Middlebury Pranksters, and you are listening to Deep Look. Vroom, vroom, yeah! 1, 2, break!
Welcome back to Deep Look. Thanks again to Jack for coming on, talking about all things Northwest Challenge. And now we turn our attention over to the other coast and Easterns. It is the biggest tournament of the year in the men's division. We get a couple West Coast teams coming out every year. That's no different this season. And it should be a great test for all these teams. It's 20 teams, 5-team pools, seeded exactly like nationals, long rounds, extra long rounds on Sunday, 2-hour rounds. You get a really, truly kind of like a little mini nationals preview. And Keith, it's going to be awesome.
I'm definitely looking forward to it. It should be a great way to finish out the regular season in the men's division. And there are plenty of questions to be asked going into this. I mean, it has been a bit of a roller coaster ride for basically everybody except UMass, who has been steady. So there are a lot of ways to look at potentialities for this tournament and come up with different ways that teams can finish.
Well, obviously there's plenty of bids on the line, but also seeding, bragging rights. UNC's never won this tournament, even though they've come in as the 1 seed many times. This year, they're not the 1 seed. They're the 2 seed behind UMass, who beat them back at Smoky Mountain Invite and currently sits at number 1 in the power rankings, number 1 in the USAU rankings. UNC sitting there to clear number 2. Are those teams destined for another battle in the finals, Keith? What do you think?
Well, they're going to be the favorites. That's not a big surprise. Both UMass's success this season and UNC's pedigree is going to mark them as such. But there are definitely teams who could do the work to knock them off. And I don't think you have to go far to find them. Just a couple slots over on the seed lines, Vermont and Oregon. And I would probably put SLO in that group too as teams that we think can. Now, SLO, I think, is the toughest job, and they're probably the most unproven. But is there anybody who still has doubts about Vermont's ability to compete with elite competition? I don't think so after what we saw from them beating Colorado at Smoky Mountain Invite and really coming very close to knocking off UMass and then putting up some other good results. So I think that Vermont has proven that they have the ability to compete. We don't know if they can do it game in and game out. That's been a little bit up for debate throughout the season. But, one heads-up matchup with UMass or UNC in semifinals, totally a winnable game for Vermont. And Oregon, they also have kind of a similar resume in the fact that their best win is a result over California, or over Colorado, excuse me. But when they're clicking, they're just so hard to stop. They're one of those teams I feel like that when they get the ball rolling and they got the momentum behind them, they can really get on a roll. That they didn't have that happen at Stanford Invite, their last tournament out, but they're traveling across the country. They've had a chance to put that behind them. That was almost a month ago. We've yet to really see them, I feel like, at full strength with the full lineup ready to go. They have some great rookies who are going to be building this season. So there's depth there. Oregon, they're a real threat.
Well, let's go pool by pool and just take a look at this and break this down before we make our actual picks. We've got UMass, Pitt, NC State, Cal, and Auburn all in Pool A. Cal certainly looking to play up for another bid for the Southwest. It could happen. Auburn kind of the odd team out here, even though they're seeded 17th. Their ranking is quite low. But UMass will certainly be the favorite here, Keith. But I think, what are we going to see from Pitt? I feels like that team hasn't really showed us their maximum potential yet. This would be a great time to bring that out. And then, NC State and Cal trying to maybe snag an upset that could be pretty big, particularly for Cal's chances of getting a bid.
I'm a little bit nervous about Pitt. I was high on them coming into the year, and you're right that we just haven't really seen it from them. They beat Minnesota 13-9 at Smoky Mountain Invite. They have some other okay wins, but they've lost close games against top teams, and that's kind of been their hallmark. And then they got blown out by Texas. So, yeah, I'm a little bit worried that Smoky Mountain Invite was a poor showing for Ensabanur, and I imagine that they are confident enough to feel like, look, we're just in the middle of our process. They're not going to be a team that's like totally shaken by that. But I am waiting to see just the flashes of that team that felt like they could be a semifinal contender. I just can't rely on them to be that team right now. There's just too much evidence that there's another side of them that's lowered the floor on their potential to compete. So I'm concerned about them. Now, we haven't talked at all about the conditions, Charlie. The conditions of this tournament right now, the forecast is not favorable for Great Ultimate.
Well, it's going to be interesting. So we're supposed to have some thunderstorms Saturday afternoon, but a bigger part of it is that we're supposed to have some wind on Saturday. I mean, it is really going to be windy. Currently, I'm literally looking at my forecast app right now. Average wind 21 miles per hour, gusting to 45. It is not going to be pleasant out there. I don't know what team that favors necessarily. Generally, I think Northeast teams, North Central teams tend to do a little bit better in those conditions. Skeptical that the West Coast teams are going to thrive in those conditions.
Well, there's one team who has their own meme, the Cal Zone, which is a funny nickname for Cal. But look, Cal Zone is one of the strengths of their squad. So if there's a team that you're in the field and you're like, wow, who benefits a lot from these shifting conditions? It may be Cal overall. And in fact, the UC Santa Cruz Twitter account, tweeted out like a video hyping up Cal, which is kind of funny to see like in region camaraderie, and the Cal Zone. But although having played in a tournament and this kind of wind already this year, there's like a zone when once you get out of the wind gets so strong that a zone might not even be the best option at that point, because you don't want to give anybody free anything because all the throws are so hard. So you might as well just match up and make a team show you that they can beat you in that sense. So maybe it'll be so windy that even a zone won't actually be that useful.
All right.
It'll be irrelevant what defense you're playing.
On to Pool B: North Carolina, Minnesota, Northeastern, Ohio State, and UNC Wilmington. Keith, what do you think about this pool?
Interesting pool. I don't know what to get out of the middle of the group. I mean, Minnesota has shown some real flashes. Their O-line is very strong. They can put up points in bunches, and the question is, can the defense come out and help them get rolling, or can they get some crossover from some of the players they bring over to the D-line? But they'll be very familiar, having already played Northeastern this year. This is an intriguing 2 seed. I think that they have the potential to score the upset, but they have to watch out. I mean, we've seen good things from Ohio State and Northeastern at points during the year. Even UNC Wilmington has had limited, but some bright spots. Minnesota, I think, is the swing point in this pool, because that's a dangerous pairing. I think Northeastern and Ohio State behind them.
Yeah, I mean, this Minnesota team has played a lot of close games. They've close wins, close losses against a lot of teams. I mean, the largest margin in any of their games at Smoky Mountain Invite was 4 in a loss to Pitt. They went 4-3. They won a bunch of games by 2 or 3, and they lost a bunch of games by 2 or 3. So to me, that's a classic team that could lose to could lose to kind of any good team and could beat any good team. Does their O-line show up? Do they hit their shots? Do we see Paul Krennic doing his thing? Max DeLynn has been one of the best freshmen this year. I mean, I feel like there's plenty to like about this Minnesota team, but I have no idea what to expect with the weather on Saturday. It's going to be definitely a little bit unpredictable. Northeastern and Ohio State. Does OSU have a chance to move up here at all? They're sitting right now at 19. So they're a classic bid watch team, because Pitt's already sitting there with a bid, and I know that Ohio State's not going to want to have to face them, even though I think they could be Pitt. I don't think it's crazy to think that they could beat Pitt in a 1-bid Ohio Valley Regional. But they are certainly going to be looking to move up past, NC State, South Carolina. And, they have shots at teams in this pool that are the perfect kinds of games to win if you want to move up.
They lost to Northeastern by 2 at Smoky Mountain Invite. They also lost by the same count to like Carleton and Colorado by 3. So I like the potential ceiling, I guess, for Ohio State, but aside from beating Georgia twice when Georgia was like in the dumps and when Georgia's playing their worst, I don't know what to make of Georgia. I'm sure we're about to talk about them in Pool C. There's nothing that jumps out at you to make you feel like this Ohio State team is really elite. Maybe I was overestimating them when I was talking about their ability to beat Minnesota. They played UNC close at Queen City Tune-Up. Like, I don't think they're going to be an easy out, but I'm not seeing a lot that makes me feel like confident that they're going to be a real dangerous upset in the way that perhaps Northeastern might be.
All right, moving on to Pool C. We've got Vermont, Cal Poly SLO, Tufts, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Man, this is a very interesting pool. It feels like a great test for SLO. I mean, this is a team like the other, West Coast teams that have mostly just played against the West Coast opponents. And so we get to see them against some of the best teams in the East, a Georgia team looking to be resurgent, a Wisconsin team that needs to start to kind of figure out how to level up before regionals to try to keep their national streak alive. And then, of course, this Vermont team, which has been one of the best in the country, at full strength at Smoky Mountain Invite. So I love this pool. I think almost all these games are going to be fun.
This to me is the most exciting pool, I think, and it's because of the depth of the pool. Tufts, Georgia, and Wisconsin are all teams that have shown the ability to compete with top-level teams, but all of their best results are basically close losses. Georgia, of course, they're the mystery box team. Will they be the Georgia that we saw at Smoky Mountain Invite for like 4 years in a row or whatever, however long they've been going to this tournament? Or will they be the team that we saw at warm-up? Will Aiden Downey look like a player of the year candidate? Like, it's a striking, even just visual, to look at their win-losses from those two tournaments. So you got to be curious about what Georgia team is going to show up. But Tufts, Wisconsin, they've had their moments, both of these teams, but they also have struggled to get those big-time wins, and Wisconsin's coming off a rough showing at Centex. So this is a curious pool because I could see those three teams beating each other. I could see any of them putting a scare into Vermont or SLO. I don't know if I could see them winning those games, but I don't know which of these teams to favor to finish third. And you got to think that Georgia probably has the highest ceiling of the three. They're the team I guess you get scared of based on what we saw in warm-up. Maybe they could pull one off on Vermont or SLO, but even then it might feel like a reach.
Let me remind you, Keith, Georgia laid a huge egg at Smoky Mountain Invite last year. What did they do at Easterns? They came in as the 12th seed. They made the final where they lost to Brown 15-13, the number 1 seed. So I'm not going to probably pick Georgia this year to make the final, but we have precedent there, and we know that this team has the tools to play at the highest level. They've just been very inconsistent, and that's been like a programmatic issue now for a couple of years.
You're saying that the playbook's out. Like, everybody knows what Georgia's up to. They're not surprised. This is like a snake in the grass, but it takes like 2 tournaments to
It's
to work
very
out.
strange. They looked great at warm up, and then they were terrible. I mean, they lost a lot of games. They didn't play as bad as they did last year, but are they going to bounce back? There's not a lot of pressure for them to do so because the Southeast is not getting a second bid. So they could just play their bench if they want to. We'll see what they do.
Do they go to the same hotel, or are they eating at the same restaurant on
Somebody's
Friday?
got a voodoo doll somewhere. I don't know what's going
what
on.
is happening?
Okay, Pool D. Oregon, Carleton, Brown, the 4-5-9, Michigan, and South Carolina. A live dog down there at the 20 seed, the last seed of the tournament in South Carolina. They do not deserve to be seated so low, but there they are. Currently, they are actually sitting on the last bid, the third bid for the AC at the 17 spot in the USAU rankings. So, Keith, a very compelling pool as always with the 4-5-9.
Look, let's just South Carolina. That's what we need to talk about. They're going to win this pool. Our Discord is in love with them. People love the South Carolina team, and look, they actually are somewhat compelling. I don't know if they quite have the horses overall, but adding Trip Crowley to this team has I think changed their trajectory, and I certainly don't expect them to finish last place when all is said and done at this tournament. Now, can they get any wins in this pool? Well, I don't know what to get out of this Brown team. I've been waiting all year for Brown to transform, for them to level up. It feels like they've been like, the RPG characters just grinding to get all the right gear and get the right setup for their build. Well, hopefully they have it, because it's time to start showing out what this team can do. You don't want to show up to New England Regionals. I mean, maybe they're going to have like 9 bids at New England Regionals, so it won't matter. But you don't want to show up there and that's the first time that you're really putting your foot on the gas. And we saw them look a little better at Smoky Mountain Invite, but there's so much to believe in Jock Nissen in particular. Like, he and Leo Gordon, what they're capable of if they're both healthy. I still see the pieces on this team for them to be very strong. I believe in the coaching staff, but the results, they've been shaky, and this is not going to be an easy pool. I don't think either Michigan or South Carolina are pushovers. So that's the team that, if they're playing like they were earlier in the year, South Carolina could shock everybody when they play Brown. But if we start to see the Brown that I think is in there, then they're live to win the pool.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's hard to pick a pool winner in this pool, actually. I mean, it depends on which Oregon we get. Do we get the Oregon from Pres Day? Or do we get the one from Stanford Invite? Those are very different teams, very different outcomes. Carleton, hot and cold. I just think that I can't see them winning all their games in this pool. But, then again, you have to put a lot of faith into the Brown program to want to pick this team, but I feel like they're going to get there. Even though they're super thin, I feel like having a great day on Saturday and then really struggling on Sunday because they get tired and their legs run out, that's very plausible to me. But, we really haven't seen them at full strength. So I want to see them out there with all of their top guys on the field, at which point I think their O-line becomes extremely difficult to get breaks against. Extremely difficult. I mean, Jock Nissen and Leo Gordon, those guys can run the offense. And it's not like they've been horrible this season. They've been fine. They've been solid. But that's been playing, one or two of their top guys down. So they simply do not have the depth to win the games against top teams without all those guys on the field. But assuming that they're all playing at Easterns, I think they have a chance to maybe, like you said, win this pool. I think it could happen.
Outside of the top 4 seeds, who do you think is the most likely team to make a run to finals?
A run to finals
Of this tournament?
My gut tells me Pitt, even though we haven't seen it. I just feel like Henry Ing, Tristan Yarder, like those guys should be able to take this team further than they've been going so far. And they're the kind of team that tends to get better as the season goes along. Who would you say?
To me, I guess I probably should say Slow, but I really think it might be Brown. I don't know. They're the same. They're very much in the same boat as Pitt. Like, you trust in what you know about the top end of the team, about the program and the coaching staff,
right? And
you don't look so much at the results because we've seen this kind of group be successful. So I think that if I had to bet money, I might put it on Brown of those teams. But yeah, I mean, I look at Slow, Brown, Pitt, and then I guess Georgia. Those are the teams I would if you're gonna pick a team. Sorry to the North Central folks, but yeah, I guess of those 3, I would probably take Brown.
Well, it's going to be fascinating overall weekend. So time to make our picks, Keith. Time to put your money where your mouth is. Who you got?
Oh man, I'm not ready. All right. In the final, let me just quick make sure the format allows for
it's. I will tell everybody the format is top 2 teams from each pool go to quarters. There is no pre-quarters.
Ooh.
So it's a little different than college nationals. So you have to show up for pool play, or you simply do not make the bracket. And then it's just straight quarters, 2-hour rounds, 1A, 2B. And 1D, 2C, and that's on to the final.
I feel like I'm gonna regret this, but I'm gonna pick UMass to make the final. Last time I was sitting in this spot trying to come up with reasons to doubt UMass, and it burned me. So I'm not gonna make the same mistake. And I'm going to doom them to lose in semifinals by picking them to make the final.
I really like, because they're the 1 seed, I really like their path.
That is the other thing, is I like the top 3 seeds the most. I know that's not exactly, like outstandingly insightful analysis. Like it's chalk, but the fact that the 2 and the 3 have to play each other, it just makes me feel a lot better about picking UMass than either Vermont or UNC. In this situation. So to me, yeah, it feels like it's Vermont versus UNC. I think I'm just going to stick with chalk. I like what I see on tape from UNC a lot. The offense is just a freight train. I mean, they have, I don't know, like 5 guys who I think have a real shot at All-American spots. Probably not all at the same time, but any combination of them, that they might end up with 3 or 4 on the All-American team. So yeah, I like UNC to make the final, and I'm gonna take UMass to win for the reasons I was saying before. I the UNC versus UVM thing is troubling me. So I'm going to take UMass to win the thing.
Gimme UMass, gimme UNC, and I'm taking UNC to win, baby. I think this is going to be finally the time that they're going to win Easterns. Normally they win everything leading up to Easterns, and then they lose their game at Easterns. Well, they've already lost their game. They lost to Smoky Mountain, a tournament in which they were not subbing fully to win maximally. And I think that will change at Easterns. I think this is going to be a tune-up for Nationals, and I expect this team to really show off. And I think they win by 2 or 3 goals. I mean, I am leaning on what I know of this team from the last however many seasons and the talent on this roster. And UMass is very impressive. In fact, if UMass beats UNC again and wins this tournament, that would be amazing. But I think UNC is going to make adjustments. It's harder for UMass to make adjustments. They haven't lost yet. And I think that UMass is going to be the one taking the lumps this weekend.
Totally tracks with what we've seen in college history. So the subscribers for Easterns are in line with Charlie. They also have UMass making the final against UNC and UNC taking the win. So everybody's got the same finalists. It's all going to come down to the winner at Easterns.
All right, so there you go. Those are our picks for Easterns. Let's quickly do some picks for Northwest Challenge in the men's division. And just to run down the situation, UBC is the 1 seed, Washington the 2, Utah State, Oregon State, and UVic the next 3 top seeds. 12 teams at the tournament. Definitely not deep like Easterns, nor top heavy like Easterns, but very interesting bid allocation conversations, which we will discuss in our subscriber bonus segment. Keith, who you taking to make the final and win this thing?
I'm going to take Washington. I'm of the belief that they've kind of righted the ship. They may not be the elite team that the top 10 quality team I thought in the preseason, but I think they're on the right track. But the other thing is, like, you're picking from teams that have been just wobbly this year. I mean, I think UBC is the most talented team in the field. Maybe even more talented on paper than Washington. But how can you not be nervous after the way they looked at Stanford Invite? They lose by 3 to Washington. They lose to Oregon State. They barely beat Utah State. Considering that 2 of those teams are the teams that are in the consideration set here, that's pretty concerning. It's shaky. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and man. I like Oregon State, but
he's frozen.
Their resume looks exactly the same. They're just like every time that they win a good game, there's like 2 other losses that you're like, what are they doing? So yeah, I'm gonna take the talent and take UBC. So I'll go Washington UBC and Washington to win.
All right, there's a seeding crossover at this tournament, so the winners of each mini 3-team pool will play a crossover seeding game. The 1 plays the 3, the 2 plays the 4. If everything goes to seed, that'll mean UBC versus Utah State and Washington versus Oregon State, which to me means that Utah State has a great chance to show up here, beat UBC, and make a run to final, which is what I'm going to pick. I have Utah State making the final against Washington. I think Washington's going to show us that they truly are a good team. They had an opening loss at Stanford Invite that was not great. But other than that, they had a really good tournament. And I think that they're going to clearly show that they're the best team here. I also think it's an interesting thing. There's a lot of incentives that are weird here for teams to maybe not bring it in full against UBC and Washington. And we'll talk about that more in the sub bonus. But I've got Utah State losing to Washington in the final.
I can see this happening, but the way it happens is not in the semifinals. Utah State wins the crossover,
yes,
and puts UBC and Washington up against each other.
That's exactly what I'm
picking. Where I think the opening is, because I don't know if I could trust UBC to win like 3 games against Utah State and Oregon State. There's nobody in this tournament I think I trust that much. The subscribers have Washington and UBC, with Washington taking it at Northwest Challenge. So the same lineup as I have. Charlie's the differentiator, having Utah State in the final. So that's really the only key place for points. And speaking of points, here's where we're standing. Charlie has given up the lead after a long run in front.
Brutal.
Charlie has given away enough points over the past few weeks. The subscribers and I are both tied with 42 total points. Charlie is in third with 39 points. So it's end of the regular season. It's a big weekend for Charlie. See if he can get back in front with the UNC win and Utah State success.
I played myself with the picks at Northwest Challenge. To get no finalists is just brutal. I had UBC winning it all, and like I don't really think that's totally outlandish. They might have been the second best team there,
yeah.
But the bracket structure matters. Khalil Phillips is good like that.
Yeah, it's just a couple picks that make a big difference around here.
All right, well, that is going to do it for this edition of Deep Look. Make sure to join us for our subscriber bonus segment where we go deep into the bid watch. There's a lot to watch this weekend, including in the women's division where second order effects could make a couple of changes at the margin. We'll break down everything as it stands today, what we're going to expect to see at Easterns and Northwest Challenge, and more. So you can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.